So this is my favourite one. But if you look where the eye is, obviously to their back, right around there. But if you look at the front of it, it looks like what used to be a horn. And also in every one of these rocks, you have a slit where the mouth would be. And like, you've got to start like asking the question, like I mentioned in my last video, like how many coincidences, like, so the eye the inside of our eye looks exactly like an inside eye would look like bubbly, gristly, that funny kind of texture, kind of skin. You've got eyes on both sides of the rocks, exactly where the eyes would be. You've got horns exactly where the horns would be. I mean, like, they keep stacking up, and for me, I like when I first started looking into it, I thought, I'm not so sure about this. But when you actually start looking into it and looking at these rocks and with new eyes, you start to think, how can they not be? So the next clip I'm going to show you is from a channel called Old World Florida. It's another fantastic channel that I highly recommend. And this is going through a few articles of some of the finds that they were discovering back in the 1800s. And it's just to give you basically an idea of the sheer number of articles that there are. I'm not talking about the odd one or two here and there that make the headlines. They were being reported almost weekly, and the key to it all is they're all being sent to the Smithsonian Institute, which Old World Florida does touch upon. But yeah, this is about a 10-minute clip, and I say the next part in this video series will be going through the bones that were being found and then comparing it with some of the bits that I am finding on the Jurassic coast, in particular in Portland, Dorset.
The Smithsonian Institute, whose reputation 100 years ago was even worse than it is now, today denies the existence of any abnormally large human bones, despite the clear evidence that hundreds of such bones were, in good faith, sent to them for preservation and further research. These bones would never be heard of again. It is institutions of this sort, posing as benefactors to society, who are to blame for the thoroughness of this cover-up. Seeing ourselves at the dawn of the age of information, however, no amount of sabotage or censorship will longer be able to hold back the truth. So, without further ado, let us now set the record straight and restore to man's memory the Philistines of Florida, the Goliaths of the Glades, the children of the dawn. Now enjoy. There were the giants famous from the beginning, that were of so great stature and so expert in war. Those did not the Lord choose, neither gave he the way of knowledge unto them, but they were destroyed, because they had no wisdom, and perished through their own foolishness. Baruch chapter 3, verse 26. Part 1. Newspaper articles. The frequent discovery of extraordinarily sized human bones in Florida was reported on regularly in the newspapers of America until an abrupt halt to all giant-related stories which occurred around the year 1950. All of the following excerpts can be found yourself by accessing public newspaper archives. Let us now read a small selection of articles which demonstrate the prevalence of giant skeletons in every corner of Florida. The Tampa Sunday Tribune of Sunday, July 25, 1948, reported the following. Evidence of ancient Florida culture indicated in relics. Quote, Mr. Watson was active but meticulous in his efforts to unravel the story of Florida's earliest human inhabitants, the races who long antedated the Indians known to modern historians. He cites many evidences of an ancient culture, great cement cisterns, no doubt constructed for the storage of rainwater, canal systems, stone foundations for structures, and he tells of the exhumation of a people of enormous stature, men who must have been at least 7 feet tall, with large round teeth, worn but showing no indication of decay. The picture he presents of these prehistoric giants is similar to that I wrote long ago of the skeletons discovered in the burial place on Cypress Street near West Tampa. I am 6 feet tall, and several of these thigh bones which I measured are 4 to 6 inches longer than mine. Mr. Watson appears to have had personal contact with a character whose name has appeared many times in the stories of Florida. Discussing Florida's first prehistoric citizens, Mr. Watson makes the definite declaration that the earliest residents of the Florida Peninsula were not Indians, as is generally surmised. Indians built few, if any, mounds. They were too indolent. The Aborigines were races of people called the Abenakis, children of the sun, long extinct tribes of sun worshippers who inhabited the coastal regions hereabouts 6 centuries ago. Some of them may have been descendants of the Aztecs of Mexico. Their mounds extended from Shell Beach in the north of Sarasota County, down the west coast of Florida, around and up the east coast. I have explored their mounds in great numbers, all the way up the coast to North Carolina. Near Jupiter Lighthouse on the east coast of Florida, I found the skeletons of some of these men who were 7 feet in height, and whose jawbones contained the most remarkable specimens of molars I have ever seen. The Tampa Tribune of the 14th of February, 1925, reported the following. Skeletal remains of Florida giant is discovered. Discoveries of skeletal remains here, which may have an important bearing on theories of a giant race believed to have inhabited the Florida west coast before the coming of the Spaniards, were made this morning by workmen grading the island road near the Charlotte and Lee County lines. The discoveries include a skull and a femur or thigh bone, both so highly mineralized as to be almost pure silica and limestone, and kept from crumbling only by immersing in gelatin solution. Before measurements could be taken, the skull measured 23 centimeters in length and 18 in width, being about 1/4 larger than normal modern skulls, showing signs of fronto-occipital flattening, the artificial molding practiced by early Indian tribes. The length of the femur was 63 centimeters. The bones are thought to be those of a male, and indicated, according to local authorities, a probable height of not less than 7 feet. The specimens are being prepared for shipment by A.C. Belvis of New York to the Smithsonian Institution, which has already dispatched one expedition to Florida to excavate shell mounds on the west coast in search of proof of the giant race theory, with so far negative results. The Miami Daily News of February 14, 1925, also printed, Skull of Giant starts theory of Florida race. Portions of large skeleton found by road graders near Boca Grande. Discovery of a skull 1/4 larger than that of the normal modern man, together with bones indicating a probable height of not less than 7 feet, today led to speculation over theories of a giant race believed to have inhabited Florida before the coming of the Spaniard. The portions of the skeleton were found yesterday by workmen grading a road near the Charlotte and Lee County lines. This article, too, notes that, quote, The specimens are being prepared for shipment to the Smithsonian Institution." End quote. The St. Petersburg Times of Thursday, December 14th, 1922, reported the following. Big mound yields giant skeleton. Cedar Keys, Florida, December 13th. The remains of a gigantic aborigine was unearthed a few days ago in the midst of an Indian or oyster mound. The skeleton measured over 9 feet in length, and the jaws were large enough to take in those of an ordinary person. Tons of oyster shells had to be removed before the skeleton was unearthed. The Miami Daily Metropolis reported the following on Saturday, May 6, 1922. The entire coastal region of Florida has been marked by mounds made by ancient Indians. The bays, sounds, estuaries, rivers, etc., forming a part of coasts, both Atlantic and Gulf, were the habitat of great quantities of shellfish, which evidently formed a large portion of the diet of the region's ancient denizens. North of the Caloosahatchee River is an immense conical mound. All down the Gulf Coast, even on the adjacent keys, are found the remnants of the feasts of the Aborigines. Right in Miami, or at least on the beach side, have such remains been found. On the Palm Beach side of Lake Worth, excavations have been made into one such. A few years ago, the mound at Yamato, the Japanese colony about 60 miles north, was explored by Charles Nelson Dutton, who is a private collector from the north. The Yamato tumulus is located about 600 yards from the ocean and is circular in form. The investigators pronounced the relics taken from it to be about 700 years old and to be the work of the Abenaki Indians, or the Children of the Dawn, as they have been poetically described, due to the fact that they were sun worshippers and lived on the Sunrise Coast of North America, their first appearance being in the vicinity of North Carolina. Some ethnologists claim that the Abenakis were the first humans to tread the soil of Florida and were said to have been a race of giants, the stature of the men being about 8 feet. This would bear out the statements of one of the earliest explorers of Florida, that they found in the northern interior of Florida a tribe of very tall men. One writer says of them, quote, "They were pacific, industrious, intelligent, and perfectly moral. They were more nomadic in disposition than their later brethren of the redskin, and Caribs in spirit, but not in caste. These people were artisans, craftsmen, sculptors, and created wonderful things in pottery. Their pottery has been found in this state in considerable quantity and is unique in the markings of their decorative art, much resembling a checkerboard in squares, but now and then diamond-shaped. The county of Palm Beach, as well as others of the state, have hauled away many of these mounds for road building. At one time, other mounds were found in the locality, one at Jupiter being of horseshoe form. Some years ago, there was found in natural formation rock, near the bed of an ancient river, 2 human skeletons, one of each sex, also the bones of a saber-toothed tiger. They were exhumed from a depth of 6 or 8 feet, and attracted worldwide attention, starting a discussion, pro and con, as to the genuineness of the discovery. Some geologists pronounced the find to be at least 125,000 years old, antedating the pyramids of Egypt and having been deposited there before the glacial period laid its chill hand on North America.
So that was an extract from Old World Florida's YouTube channel. Like I say, another channel I highly recommend you take a look at. He has some fantastic articles and has really picked apart largely Florida's history, but his channel isn't just limited to that area. Hopefully now you have an idea of what they were finding, what they have hidden from us, and some of the inconsistencies that the official narrative of not just giant bones of large humans and animals of the past, but also how evidence suggests that some of these things they were finding could be a lot closer in history than we are led to believe. I just felt it was important to show you the deception before presenting evidence of what I'm finding locally to me. So I live on what is classed as the Jurassic coast in a town called Weymouth in Dorset, which has some super interesting stuff in itself. But I wanted to concentrate on Portland today, which is well known for its quarrying and predominantly its stone all around the world. This is one I went into a while back. It's also one of the most popular places on the south coast of England to find large animates and fossils like these. And look at all these fossils in there. So they've just instantly been toasted. And that's really charcoaled rock. That was some footage I took a while back, and I'll be honest, my view has changed somewhat. I used to be of the opinion that a lot, if not all of this, was melted structures, extremely heat damaged material. I'm not saying there isn't melted structures and buildings, and in Portland in particular there is definitely heat damaged material in bits and pieces. But it is a quarrying island, and mine blasted damage from dynamite can't be ruled out. This will be touched on at length in the next part of the video series, but I'm of the opinion now that a lot of what we're seeing in rock formations, in this clip in particular, are possibly giant tree remains or petrified giant trees. But before that, I want to show you what I've been finding in Portland local to me and see what you think on some fascinating finds that I've come across. I mean, this area is obviously known as Fossil Central, or the Jurassic coast, or whatever you want to call it. And you get these huge, like snail-like creatures, animates I think it is. And you never see animates or snails or anything like that nowhere near as big as, I mean, look how big that would have been originally. So is it really beyond the realms of possibility that huge creatures also got encased in mud, and also whatever the apocalyptic event was, managed to case all these massive creatures in whatever encased these guys? See, look at the size of this fossil. So it goes, you can see it goes from all the way around here. So like, that's how big it is. So if you compare that to the size of how they are now, they're about that big, aren't they? So is it beyond the realms of possibility that these animals are just on a larger scale to what we know now, like reptiles? So this is my favourite one. So the lighting's not that great here for some reason. But if you look where the eye is, obviously to the back, right around there. But if you look at the front of it, it looks like what used to be a horn. And also in every one of these rocks, you have a slit where the mouth would be. And like, you've got to start like asking the question, like I mentioned in my last video, like how many coincidences, like, so the eye the inside of our eye looks exactly like an inside eye would look like bubbly, gristly, that funny kind of texture, kind of skin. You've got eyes on both sides of the rocks, exactly where the eyes would be. You've got horns exactly where the horns would be. I mean, like, they keep stacking up, and for me, I like when I first started looking into it, I thought, I'm not so sure about this. But when you actually start looking into it and looking at these rocks with new eyes, you start to think, how can they not be? So I am jumping the gun a little bit there, and I don't expect you to be convinced solely by looking at one image of a rock. But let's have a look at this rock in a little bit more detail. So first of all, this is just a standard lizard just down the road in Poole, so about 30 miles away, and I wanted to try and get a modern version of a local lizard to try and make it as accurate as possible. As I say, it's found locally in Poole. The thing I want you to concentrate on at the moment is look around the eye. Look at the texture and the structure of the skin. And here is a close-up of a water dragon's eye for a little bit more detail. Look at how there's a kind of protective skin in and around the eyelids, a common feature in reptiles. And I also want to highlight the bubble effects on the eyelids, which will become prevalent when we look inside the eye of this very rock that I suspect is a petrified reptile head. Let's go off a bit closer to the eye. So if you look inside, does that look like it could be the inside of an eye? So it goes back further enough. You've got a little cave at the back. You've got all this like bubbly effect sort of here, like you would get in an eye, like gristle, and I don't know what the technical biological term for it is. Fascinating. So that was a close-up of this rock inside what I suspect is the eye, or what was the eye. But if we zoom in a little, what do we see? The same ring and texture around the eye. And if we go back to the water dragon eye quickly, so imagine it covered in sediment, mud, clay. Could that eyelid turn in on itself and look similar to what we see inside the rock today? So if you look at this one, sorry, I put it at a bit of an angle because you can get the whole thing. And so if you look down the bottom here, so there, where that hole is there, see every other rock is like this and has an eye in it. So let's go and see if it has an eye on the other side. Yeah, look, there's the eye on the other side. Oh, like I say, every other rock is like this. That was just another of the many rocks along the coast of Portland, Dorset. But again, if you look around the eye, we have that ring again. And you'd get this occurring naturally in any being which is being petrified, because the tissue and skin around their area is softer. Certain sediments would pass through and lighter materials, I guess, wouldn't. And they would stay on the surface, which creates the different texture that we see. And if you look, that blacky, tarry type substance is on other parts of the rock, so it would back up that theory. That last rock probably wasn't the best example to show you, so I thought I'd show you this one as well, as it's got two in the same image. Again, if you look around the eye, it's got the same texture, the same ring, and every single rock that I've been able to get round to the other side. Obviously, the one I left, I haven't been able to unfortunately lift that rock and find out if there is an eye on the other side. But every one that I can get access to, there is an eye exactly in the place where it should be around the other side. If the rock hasn't worn away, there are some examples of Some other rocks that are a bit more exposed, where the rock has broken down and you've kind of only got a part of the rock left. But I will show you a few more images in the background after this, and also another super interesting photo of an eye, of inside of an eye of another of one of these rocks, which shows you the bubbling effect even more so than in the rock that I previously showed you. And here's the image that I was telling you about, where you can really see that bubbling effect. Now, you're telling me this can occur naturally in a rock through water erosion? Please explain that to me. If you look at this, I mean, there's hundreds of examples of these. It's just one of the more obvious ones. But what does that look like? To me, it looks like a bone. It's like a thigh bone or something. You've obviously got the way it goes in. There's so many examples of these. I'll show you them as I find them. Another one. You can tell where it like curves in, exactly like a bone would do. Obviously, if you've got these massive beasts everywhere, which there's literally dozens of them, not hundreds, but there's dozens of them there. It's exactly what you would have all the body parts around as well, wouldn't you? Here is, you telling me this one here isn't a bone? Let me get a bit closer, hang on. Next, I wanted to show you what I suspect are bones, petrified bones. And there are hundreds of these rocks along this part of the Portland coastline. Would you agree that most, if not all of these images look like bones? I'll show you in the background now. Realistically, how can water erosion leave them looking like this? I mean, I could buy that story if it were maybe one or two that look like that. By the way they were sat on the ground, maybe the water could create this effect. But not on the number that I'm coming across. I do think we need to go back to using our eyes more when we can, when we see the obvious. Scientists, geologists, paleontologists have done a decent job over the years of explaining the unexplainable. But as mentioned throughout this series, and I hope has also convinced you to an extent, are they telling us the whole truth? But why, I hear you ask? Why would they lie? Why would they want or have to? I will explain later on in the series.
Professor J.H. Kerr, who was the professor of chemistry and geology at Colorado College, had the honor on the 13th of December of unearthing some of the most remarkable fossils near the foot of Pikes Peak in a public resort known as the Garden of the Gods. The chief was a reptile, 117 feet long. A part of it exposed to the rain and frost had crumbled, but the remainder consists of bones of petrified casts in a well-preserved condition. About 4,000 pounds of these and several hundred pounds of bones have already been removed. In connection with these gigantic remains were petrified portions of other animals, one of them being 8 or 10 feet long, whose position would seem to indicate that they had gone into the stomach of the 100-foot monster. The professor, now I have a really interesting one of these that we'll get to further down this series of, they found a petrified person inside of a giant alligator, 30-foot alligator. The professor also has unearthed about 50 species of petrified nuts, comprising among them the hickory nut, the butternut, the pecan, a variety of Brazil nuts, and the almond. Again, we're talking with a tropical setting here. One, which seems to belong to the Brazil nut family, is considerably larger than a pint cup. One which seems to belong to the Brazil nut family is considerably larger than a pint cup. Okay, you hear what I'm saying, guys? A pint cup seed. So how big are these trees? Well, their seeds are as big as a pint cup, larger than a pint cup. Larger than a pint cup. These seeds are huge. They're bigger than the fruit. Think about how big the fruit would be. Holy shit. These, as well as the animal fossils, would seem to point to a much milder climate, yes, tropical, like the entire world, than even the most enthusiastic admirers of Colorado can claim for it now. Yeah. Whoa. Crazy. 117-foot long monster with a 10-foot long creature in the stomach and petrified nuts and seeds as big as a pine cup.
Don't think I need to tell you who that is, as his work is featured extensively in this series. But I wanted to show you some examples that are not from the UK, as I suspect it's a worldwide phenomena. Here is another video from a YouTuber called Karl, which I'll only show you a few seconds from, as I'm already a little bit concerned about copyright stuff on this video. But I believe this is footage from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado.
It looks like a big dragon skull. What the world? Like that could even be teeth in the skull. Oh.
So how big could these animals have once been? In this last clip I want to show you, which will tie in well with the next part where we go into giant ancient trees, as it's a clip from Stellium 7, who I have to admit has inspired me to look into these subjects more in the first place. Some of the detail and the evidence that he shows and goes into in his research, made more credible because of his background in biology, is some of the best, if not the best, in the subject. So again, how big could some of these animals have once been? Let's show you a short clip from Stellium 7.
Hello, and welcome to Unveiling a Titan, the first of what will be several videos in a series in which I hope to provide conclusive proof that Titans actually existed, or at the very least, a lot of compelling evidence that will spark curiosity. This is a famous mountain on the east coast of Spain, in the Costa Blanca, that's called Montgo. It's also known as the elephant. So you can see the shape of the head here, the upper back, and then tapering off. And in fact, there's a plateau here that's higher than the town in this area that looks a lot like a trunk that's been extended when you see it from the right angle. So one of the first things a skeptic will think when they look at these kinds of pictures is that people are suffering from something known as pareidolia, which is when you see things that aren't really there. You look up at a cloud and you see a dragon or a face or something, and obviously that's not really in the cloud. And so it's easy to make the same mistake when you're looking at these kinds of photographs. But in Jay Dreamer's video, I started thinking a little differently when I photographs like this, because I've been living near this mountain that is known as the elephant for the last 8 years, and when I saw these images I thought, maybe it's not just a mountain that looks like an elephant. Maybe there's actually more to it than that. So some of these might just be rocks that take that shape, that form, but you never know. Some of them might actually be fossilized elephants. This is a list of the different coincidences that I've compiled, and if you're interested in reading this, you can pause the video and do that. So obviously I don't want to suffer from pareidolia. And so when I started looking into this mountain, I decided I would look at it from a scientific perspective. I have a degree in medicine, and I've studied a lot of histology. And histology is the study of tissues. And the interesting thing about studying histology when you're looking at a mountain that's 5 kilometers long is that you don't need a microscope, because you're so small that you are the microscope. So I've been going around for the last year taking tissue samples in the forms of videos and photographs, and I'll be sharing those in this video series. This is the list of what I'm planning on doing. So in this video I'm going to do an overview of the mountain, Montgo, also known as the elephant. And in the next video I'm going to take a deep look into the eye of Montgo, and you'll see the eye in just a moment.
I highly recommend you have a watch of that series, as he shows compelling and I think undeniable evidence of the existence of huge Titan-like size animals in the past. it's not just Titans that he concentrates on as well. He does and has done a lot of work on giant trees and petrified remains and stuff like that. So yeah, highly recommend looking at stellium stuff. I say it is second to none. There is no research, other research out there like it. So that's the presentation on the bits and pieces that I've been finding around Portland. What do you think? Do you think there used to be animals and be petrified by some sort of apocalyptic event? Because the evidence certainly does suggest so. And next we will be concentrating on petrified trees and giant trees and their remains. And again, Stellium 7 will be featuring heavily in the coming episodes. I'm not quite sure yet how many are going to be, because I haven't completed all the editing yet, I'll be honest. But I would imagine it will probably be another 3 or 4 parts on top of this. So yeah, buckle in and enjoy the rides, and let me know in the comments what you think. If you're doing a similar line of research and you're coming across similar things as well, please comment. I say quite a lot of research and quite a lot of leads that I pick up on. I'm going to admit I get them in the comments. So you don't realise how valuable sometimes your knowledge could be. It could be something that no one else has ever seen before. So, and it's just obviously tying it all together.